just reality. Welcome to the human part of what we're doing. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And sometimes that human experience can kind of pull us very tightly. And when it does, remember you are peace. You are love. You are joy. You are everything that we need to get through this daily life and to get through earth. I want to thank you to all who make our services flow so smoothly. Thank you, music team, again. Thank you for being here this morning. And I want to thank Reverend Harold, who I know is at Unity of Delray Beach this morning, for a great introduction to my talk this week from his talk last week. So hopefully you were here or you were able to listen to it online. But he talked about giving, prosperity, being a prophet. He also talked about making a prophet. I thought that was a nice play on words. But thank you, Reverend Harold. Luke 6:38 says, "Give and it will be given to you. They will pour into your lap a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. For by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you in return." Charles Fillmore, Unity co-founder, and this is a long quote, so hang with me, said, "Divine law is the action of universal principles established by creative mind, spirit, for the government of creation as a whole. This law is unchangeable. Give, and it shall be given unto you. This law is dependable, it is accurate, and it never fails. The channels through which it will work are not and need not be specified by humans. We do not need to be worried or concerned about the channels through which our good will come. Let God choose the channels. If we work with the law, it works for us. It brings to us the good that is warranted." Luke 12:32, "Fear not, little flock, for it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom." In this quote, Fillmore is saying that this is the day for us to recognize, to understand that the universe is always working in our favor. Again, the human part of me pulls against that sometimes. Kind of difficult. But the universe is always working in our favor. Believe that. It is the law. It's not something that we can change. It never fails. It's accurate. It's dependable. And it's always working intentionally for our good. Hear that. The universe is always working intentionally for our good. That is how prosperity works. Trust the universe. Trust God to work in your favor. This morning, as we continue our discussion on prosperity, I was led to discuss giving and receiving. And the law of giving and receiving is based on the fact that everything in the universe operates through dynamic exchange. Every relationship is one of give and take. And if you don't believe that, you're probably not in one. Every relationship is give and take. We don't get to be right all the time. That's deeply disappointing for some of us. Because sometimes I'm just positive that I am till I find out that I am not. It is a relationship between giving and receiving. It's a flow of energy in the universe. And when we stop that flow of energy, we interfere with nature's intelligence. We have to give and we have to receive if we want to keep money flowing, if we want to keep health flowing, if we want to keep relationships circulating and growing in our lives. We have to stay in the flow of giving and receiving. Fillmore also reminds us that simply because we give to a particular person or place doesn't mean that's where our good is going to come from. If I give you $5 and it says we're going to get it back tenfold, I'm not expecting you to give me $50 next week. If it did, I would pass out anyway. That's not how it works. We get our good back in many different ways. That good just keeps coming to us, and it comes to us in ways that we may not even understand. Fillmore says divine action is universal in its scope. If by our limiting thoughts, words, or acts we attempt to deal with divine law in terms of personality only, by expecting recompense from the one to whom we have given in service or goods, we place an obstacle in the way of the free flow of the divine law of supply in our life. Our business is concerned with the action of fundamental principles, not just with persons. Our recompense or supply must come through the complete and correct application of those principles. We must allow them to take the right course unhampered. Again, our good comes from all manner of sources, and sometimes we throw obstacles in the way of that good. We'll talk about that when we talk about receiving in a moment. All of us sometimes have feeling of lack. True? Sometimes we feel like we don't have everything we're supposed to have, everything we need. There's some point in our life. There was a point in my life when I first started coming to this church that I actually didn't drive on the 408. I drove on Highway 50 from my house out in East Orlando near Bithlo. And I drove it because I didn't honestly have the money to put into the tolls. And I felt so sorry for myself. Oh my gosh, it took me a whole 10 extra minutes to get here. That was just terrible. I forgot the part about the fact that I had a car to drive here. I had a house to leave. I had all of these blessings that were a part of my life. And I was concentrating on that one little square area of lack. So I'm going to say to you this morning, if you're lacking in money, how do you get more money? Give. You give money. Now, this is the part where we talk about tithing, and I know people always cringe when we do that, but I'm going to go on and throw it out there. A tithe is 10% of your income, and that's what we are called to give. I do still find it interesting that that's the only verse that Unity doesn't interpret metaphysically. 10% is 10%, and I'm told if you look at it metaphysically, it's still 10%, no matter how you want to do it. But when you're giving that 10%, that's you saying up front, here's what I'm giving back to the place where I was spiritually fed. I'm going to hope that's your church. But it could be a lot of different places. There are a lot of people in places who spiritually feed me throughout my week. And when I tithe my 10%, I give it to the church, and anything above that I give to people in places that have blessed me. I encourage you to consider that. If you're not tithing, I encourage you to do so now, because it's a way of making sure our resources match and our practices match what we teach. I checked with the church to be sure this was a true statement, but we are current on all of our tithes as a church. I checked because if we hadn't been, I was going to leave this entire section out. Because if we don't practice what we preach, we ought not to be teaching it. We tithe on the first fruits that come in, then we pay our bills. Now, when I first started doing that, not going to lie, it was difficult. It was hard to do. I wasn't making anywhere near what I'm making now and doing things, and we had a minister who said, tithe on what you want to make, not what you're making. I thought she had lost her mind. But I did it, and I started tithing, and then I grew it, and I started tithing on what I wanted to make. And not too long after that, I made it. So then I decided, well, this is what I want next, so I start tithing on that. So I'm going to encourage you, tithing works. Tithe. Now, some of you are saying 10% is too much, so I'm going to say to you, okay, then don't tithe 10%. Tithe 5%, and then grow it every month or every couple of months. Start where you're able, and then tithe as you become more able to do so. We are tithing. We are exactly where we're supposed to be. Currency, which is our word for money, comes from the Latin word meaning to run or flow. Money is a symbol of life energy. Harold said last week, money is energy. Money absolutely is energy. And we give that life energy to bring more toward ourselves. Give, and it will be given unto you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, and poured into your lap. You don't even have to go looking for it. It's just going to come to you. But here's the other side. Maybe you have plenty of money and you just don't have friends. It's possible. Some of us can be very hermit-like at times. And when we shut ourselves off, how do we get friends? We become one. We actually go out and meet people. Isn't that amazing? And we talk to them, and we bring them into our fold, and we bring them into a part of us. Because to be a friend, we have to make friends as well. So if we're seeing lack in that area, then we need to reach out to others. If we're seeing a lack of love, maybe we need to look at who we are as loving people. We need to be love in the world. Right now, I'm just going to say bluntly, we're lacking peace in our world. I don't care which side of the political divide you fall on. We need peace in this world. So I'm inviting you to be peace, to illustrate peace in this world. Allow the peace to come through you and to work with others. And as we receive, be gracious and kind. 1 Corinthians 9, 6 through 8 says, He which soweth sparingly shall reap sparingly, and he who soweth bountifully shall reap also bountifully. Every man according to his purposes in his heart. So let him give not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that ye, always having sufficiency in all things, may abound to every good work. Fillmore said, He who is merciful receives mercy. He who refrains from judging others will not be judged. He who gives bountifully receives bountifully in return. Each one determines the size of the measure by the good that he gives out, and that's what is measured back. As I was considering this talk, it was actually the week of Father's Day. And I kept thinking about my dad. I've talked about him before, so some of you know he and I didn't necessarily jive really well together all the time. I've now learned that's true of every father and son I've ever met. Didn't really realize that when I was a kid. And my father did not say things like, I love you and I'm proud of you. That wasn't a part of his vocabulary at all. However, he was a football coach and a basketball coach and a baseball coach, and I played football and basketball. One of them, football, I was good at. The other one, not exactly the height to be great at basketball. But I had a great outside shot before there was the three-pointer. And the reason my dad did it, I firmly believe, was so we could spend time together. He didn't need to do that. He had a full-time job as an engineer. This was his side job. Back in the old days when coaches for high schools and colleges, high schools and middle schools were actually volunteers. He volunteered his time to be a coach. I believe now and understand now that was his way of saying, I love you. I want to spend time with you. When it was time for me to go to college, my parents had saved up enough money for my brother and I to do 2 years of school debt-free. My brother did his 2 years and went, I don't ever want to do this again. So my parents were like, we have some money left over. We'll just pay for all 4 of your years of school. And they did. And then when I wanted my master's degree, I went back and said, here's what I've decided I want to be when I grow up. I want to be a teacher. And my father looked at me and said, men don't teach, so come up with something else. So I did. I came up with being a professor. And they loaned me the money to get my master's. And now I've spent 42 years as either a professor or an administrator in colleges and universities. My parents gave. My parents were willing, thank you. My parents were willing to give for my brother and I to have a different kind of life than what they had experienced. They were willing and loving enough to do that for us. They made sure that they stayed in the flow of life, and then they gave so that we could also be in that flow. As I've become a parent, I think I'm better at saying I love you than they were. But I also understand the giving part. That's a part of who we are. There's a story of a McDonald's in Indiana where a lady was pulling in through the drive-thru, and when she got to the window, she noticed the car behind her had 4 kids in it. So she said to the person, I'm going to pay for theirs as well. So she paid for it. Now the man and the 4 kids pull up, and they said, you don't owe us anything. The lady in front paid for yours. And he goes, oh, well, let me pay for the lady behind me. So he paid for hers, and this started going through the pay it forward little thing. And by the end of the night, 167 cars had had their meal paid for by somebody else. From 8:30 in the morning to midnight, every car had someone else pay for their meal. The one that I find most interesting is that one of the cars didn't want to participate. And they said, yeah, we're not going to do that. And the employees said, it's your lucky day, your meal is free today. And they pooled their money and paid for the car behind them. They could see what was going on. They could see how the changes were taking place in people when they realized that they had been blessed by somebody else. It's small things. It doesn't require some huge, generous act on our part. All it requires is for each one of us to do a small part every day. When you see a need, fill the need. Give, and it will be given back to you. Now, the flip side of giving is what? Receiving, right. Patricia Spadero, in her book, Honor Yourself, The Art of Giving and Receiving, said, while we're called to give and give joyfully, life also beckons us to master the art of balance. We have a duty not just to give to others, but to give to ourselves and to see ourselves as worthy of receiving. We have a duty to honor others and ourselves through our receiving. So as we look at that second half, I think most of us are better at giving than we are at receiving. At least I am. I don't receive compliments well. I just say that right up front. I don't receive well when somebody offers me something big. I never quite know what to do. I was never taught that. And sometimes I try to figure out, well, why didn't I get that? Why don't I know how to receive as well as to give? And I think it's because I keep hearing that verse in my head, it's better to give than to receive. And I hear that over and over, but receiving is a part of it. To stay in the flow of life, we have to do both. We have to both give and we have to receive. So not too long ago, my boss, who had been working for 1 solid year to get me a raise and to get me a different title at work, came to me and said, this is your new title, this is your new salary. I didn't like it. I didn't like the salary that I got. I didn't like the title that I got. I wasn't thrilled with either one particularly because it wasn't what I thought I was going to get. It wasn't what I had been working toward. So just because I'm willing to talk about me and not other people whose stories I might know too, I was a spoiled little brat. And I said, wow, I'm really disappointed that's the best we could do. Yeah, receiving was not my gift that day. And to be truthful, it wasn't my gift for the next 2 or 3 weeks. In fact, it took me that long to get over the fact that I didn't get what I thought I was going to get and to realize that what I got was great. Who cares about a title? For whatever reason, I did. And I retire in 2.5 years, so who cares? Call me whatever you want. But for that moment, it was something I wasn't willing to do. I needed to work on my receiving. And a friend sent me a story of Carol Mathau and Una Chaplin, who were the wives of Walter Mathau and Charlie Chaplin. Their wives were good friends. They lived on separate coasts, and one day they were talking on the phone. And Carol shared with Una that she had been really depressed and wasn't doing well. Una fretted about her friend, wasn't sure what to do for her. So she went shopping to find something perfect for her friend. So to cheer her up, she sent her a diamond bracelet. That's a nice gift. So when she received the bracelet, she didn't know what to do. She didn't know how to respond and how to react. Thank you just didn't seem like quite enough. And she was known for her sense of humor. So she sent this note back to her. Still depressed, keep them coming. When we find ourselves in that type of situation and we get something extravagant and are at a loss for words of what to do, the best thing is thank you. When we have been blessed in this lifetime, the best thing for us to say is simply thank you. To acknowledge the gift that we have, to receive with gratitude and graciousness, and to say thank you. Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook said, God cannot give us anything unless we're in a mental condition to receive. Receiving is a part of that acceptance. Since I'm telling on myself, I'll just keep going. The second church I ever worked for as their worship leader was in a rural area, and there were a lot of farms. And some days, the farmers would bring me whatever they had grown on their farm. And one day, this man and his wife brought me this great big grocery bag full of tomatoes. Now, some of you are thinking, wow, what a great gift. But I don't like them, and I don't eat them. So I looked at them and very sweetly said, thank you, but I don't eat tomatoes. Let's give them to somebody who will. After service, the minister, who taught me an awful lot about ministry, pulled me aside and said, you just interrupted their flow of giving and receiving. From this point forward, you say thank you, and you take whatever it is they have to give. I don't care if you give them away later, but you learn to take them and graciously say thank you. It was a huge lesson for me to not stop that flow of circulation, that flow of giving and receiving. He explained that that was all those farmers had to offer, and I had turned it down. Now I know better. Feel free to bring me tomatoes anytime. But whatever it is, we should receive it with gratitude. Teaching me a lesson that I saw online not long ago that said, everything you want starts with you giving yourself permission to receive. Everything that you want requires you to give yourself permission to receive. If we want more, we have to be willing to receive more. The best way to experience and practice the law of giving and receiving is to give a gift to everyone you see. Now that seems kind of difficult, but I promise it's not. So when you meet someone, silently send that person a blessing. When I go down the road and there's an ambulance, I bless whoever's in that ambulance or whatever the situation is. Now I do that with people. Every time I see someone, I send them a blessing, a simple prayer for them, a simple acknowledgement that we are all one, we are each connected, we are all part of another. And I say to myself, and I say out loud often, bless that person. Give a gift to everyone you encounter, a compliment, a wildflower, a prayer. This will begin the process of circulating joy and affluence in your life. And gratefully receive every gift that comes your way. Be open to receiving whether it's a material gift or a compliment or a prayer. Give yourself permission to receive. Silently wish everyone you encounter happiness, joy, abundance, peace, and laughter. By giving and receiving the gifts of caring, affection, appreciation, and love, we keep wealth circulating in our life. I close with this line from our offering affirmation, and I'm going to ask you what the second two words are. Divine love through me, period. All that other stuff is what divine love is. It's through us. Divine love through me allows Spirit to live in, as, and through me every day. And so it is.